Welcome to today's presentation. I'm Ashley Murphy, the founder and principal of Arete Wealth Strategists Australia, a registered investment advisory firm specializing in the needs of Americans in Australia and Australians in America and those transitioning or living a globally mobile life between the two of those countries. Today's presentation, part one of claiming Social Security from Australia. A few disclosures. No presentation from a financial advisor would be complete, of course, without our disclosures. So today's information is, of course, as all presentations of my firms are, sourced from reliable sources. This also does not constitute personal tax, financial, or investment advice. That's something that's reserved only for private clients. A little bit about me. So I really came into this international and cross-border financial advice from birth, or the interest in this from birth, and that is because I'm a tri-citizen, born in the UK, raised in Australia, an American citizen, given my mother was an American citizen from Natick, Massachusetts, moved to Australia in the 60s, met my dad. My dad he's a professor emeritus at University of Queensland in economics. He got posted to the UK, and that's how where I was born, and that's how I came to be a tri-citizen. UQ, University of Queensland, happens to be my alma mater as well. Moved to the US in 2005. I started shopping around for financial advisors shortly before I left, and really was unimpressed given the conflicts of interest and the sales orientation and the commissions and all the rest of it. And it planted a seed that there had to be a way to do this right. And it wasn't until 2008 I sat in on a session at UC Berkeley Extension, where I would later become the runner-up student of the year and a professor there in personal financial planning. But it was in this information session where I realized there is a type of financial advisor in the US where you actually do sit on the same side of the client, and that's the RIA, the Registered Investment Advisor, and I've been that for the past decade now. I'm also the founder of the Global Financial Planning Institute, where we had our first conference last week in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. It was absolutely phenomenal. Got to meet an incredible array of other financial advisors, CPAs, estate attorneys, you name it, affiliated professionals from all over. Be that as it may, let me get into today's presentation. So first, I'll talk about what is Social Security. Should you include Social Security as part of an integrated financial plan? The status of the Social Security Trust Fund. When do you begin vesting in Social Security? What are those OASDI taxes that you see on your pay stub? What is that? What's that for? And what is it? Why is it taxed the way that it is? What qualifies as full retirement age? When we talk about Social Security, it is something that is inherently an alphabet soup kind of domain, but there are definitions you need to know, and understanding them well will save you money. How is your benefit calculated? It's actually extremely complicated, so there's more of a link over to resources and the workbooks where you can actually determine that if you want to. Don't know if that's really worth your while. Rather just enter that in, the appropriate birth dates, full retirement ages, and income amounts, and you'll really see the output that matters. How to check your vesting status and estimate your benefit. What if you work between age 62, which is typically the earliest age at which you can get Social Security benefits, and your full retirement age, which will vary from age 65 to 67. Most folks on today's call, we're going to see that they will have a full retirement age of 67. Conveniently, and not a coincidence, I happen to have an email going out to folks on my newsletter list today talking about some very recent proposals that have been making their way through Congress about how Social Security may be changed, and that's going to take on greater relevance when you see that point 3 about the status of the Social Security Trust Fund. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What about spousal benefits? A question that's often asked is, if we have a family where we have a breadwinner situation and a spouse, does that spouse get benefits? And the answer is yes. It's 50% of the worker benefit, but more detail there to go through as well. How do you actually apply to take your Social Security benefit? That's another thing we'll be getting into. Now, everything here on page 2 is what we're saving for the second webinar, because there's a lot of detail there, and I want to allow time for questions and answers at the end, but I also welcome them throughout. I enjoy making these sessions as valuable as possible for the folks that show up live, and so I'm quite happy to make today's session a little bit more interactive. So feel free to chat in or use the Q&A, whichever. I mean, technically the Q&A is what it's for, but I think the chat panel works just as well and is a little bit more intuitive. So what is Social Security? We've all heard those two words for many, many years, but what is it? It refers to old age survivors and disability insurance program in the United States, run by the Social Security Administration. Your Social Security benefit is an income stream paid to you and possibly your spouse from a certain age. Typically, that's going to be age 62 for widows or widowers. That could be as early as age 60. Not something we see quite as often, but typically age 62. And the latest age at which you can really gain a benefit from delaying is till age 70. I happen to have a new client who hasn't applied for Social Security. She's age 73. Is she going to get a benefit for waiting those additional 3 years? No, she's not. She's still getting her taxes in order and various other things going on in her life, but I've encouraged her to get on that as soon as possible, because that is truly an earned entitlement that she is eligible for and has been missing out on for the last couple of years. Okay, so, and there's that word, that phrase again, earned entitlement. It's important to understand, compared with the aged pension in Australia, Social Security is something that you pay into, you vest into it. And so it is neither income nor means tested as the aged pension is in Australia. That's to say that Warren Buffett goes to the letterbox every month and gets his Social Security check because it's something he paid into and he's entitled to get. It's the primary form of retirement income for most Americans, introduced during the Depression to avoid widespread poverty amongst older Americans. And it's been, interestingly, it's been a very successful program, largely in avoiding that. However, inflation creeps up. It is inflation adjusted, but is it enough to make up for someone's wage entirely? Mostly no is the answer. I wanted to share this. This is a new slide. I have run this presentation many times before, and I like to go through and refresh it and add as much value as I can. And here's a chart taken from JP Morgan's Guide to the Markets. And what you see here on the left is the total federal budget proposed for 2023, which you can see totals 5.9 trillion. Somewhat concerning, it seems to be the can that is forever kicked down the road. Somewhat concerning, 17% of that budget is actually just borrowing. Okay, the rest of it comes from various forms of taxes. You see income taxes there, corporate taxes, social insurance, and then other is the source there. Not sure what the other is. But on the outlays, this is the cause for concern and why we see this depletion of the Social Security Trust Fund come 2034. And that's because we have outlays of $1.32 trillion and incoming amounts of much less than that. That's actually on the next slide. Yeah, there's some dated information here in this bullet point from 2021. Always nice to have the most current and up-to-date numbers. With inflation we've experienced the last couple of years, that number's risen 200 billion to now 1.32 trillion. Another fun fact before we get into the status of the Social Security Trust Fund: where are most folks claiming Social Security from abroad? And the answer there is Canada by a long shot. But if you coupled together the Eurozone, which they haven't, they've just done individual countries, we had Germany, Italy, Poland, and Greece, that would exceed that of Canada as well. Certainly if Brexit hasn't happened and the UK was still part of the euro, then that would be even greater. Australia's right there down the bottom, so 10,740 folks receiving Social Security benefits from abroad. Okay, how does Social Security work as part of an integrated retirement income plan? So Social Security really provides a number of very valuable things. It's a guaranteed income source. Now, I think there's going to be many folks listening to this that may have their hesitations with me having mentioned that this trust fund is depleted in 2034, but that doesn't mean that one's benefit goes to zero. In fact, it says that benefits will be paid out at the rate of 79%. So it's a guaranteed source. And the way that works is current workers, they get their tax, that tax gets paid into this pool and then paid out to beneficiaries. That looked a whole lot better in prior decades when the so-called worker dependency ratio was that much more positive. So we had many more workers working. So the baby boomers, I'm thinking of in particular, as they were coming through in the 80s and 90s, and the greatest generation were the ones that were retired, the ratio of workers to beneficiaries was favorable. Now, as the baby boomers make their way through, we're seeing that dependency ratio change. So that's the broader demographic shift that's happening with Social Security. But nevertheless, it is a guaranteed income source, and it's extremely reliable. I don't think, for all the political sniping that takes place, that there's any chance that Social Security is going away, given that 65 million older Americans are receiving that benefit. It would be inconceivable that would disappear altogether. It's also inflation protected. Perhaps it doesn't keep up 100% with inflation. The assumptions that we use and have seen historically is that it passes on about 85 to 90% of CPIU. So that is the inflation that we see for urban individuals. A hedge against longevity. So that's another great benefit, meaning if you live to be 120, it's going to pay out for as long as you live. So a hedge against longevity, as you see there. Protection against the market. Again, doesn't really matter so much what's going on in the stock market. It's perhaps another corollary of that guaranteed income source. Tax advantages, up to 85% of Social Security benefits may be taxed. That again depends on your adjusted gross income. So it's a little bit more of a tax efficient income source. And risk-free increases, again, maybe another point there to be made. Oh, sorry, this is a different one. I was going to say this is an inflation amount, but I'm going to come back to this a number of times, and that is when to take your Social Security benefit, which is a subject we'll get into in greater detail in part 2 of this webinar series. But it's important to understand that you get an 8% increase in your benefit for every year that you wait beyond your full retirement age. And for folks born after 1960, that quote unquote full retirement age is age 67. So you're getting a 24% bump, a 32% bump in the amount that you're receiving from Social Security if you defer taking it until age 70. Now, not everyone can afford to do that, but if you can, that has got to be one of the best guaranteed investment returns out there. We'll talk more about this in a little bit. Okay, so the status of the Social Security Trust Fund. Every year, the government-appointed Social Security Board of Trustees releases their financial outlook on the Social Security Medicare Trust Funds. Here's a link over here and a picture of what that report actually looks like. And the quote that we heard from these trustees at that time was, they will be able to pay scheduled benefits on a timely basis until 2034, as you heard me say. At that time, the trust fund will be depleted and they'll only be able to pay, 77, I said 79% before, 77% of scheduled benefits. So in the assumptions that we use with our private clients, we tend to say 75% is the amount that would be paid. This is an extremely rigorous report that they produce. However, the future is unknowable, as we all know, and the design of the Social Security system could change, which in turn could change what those actual benefits look like in the future. So here's what we see. We're focused on the blue line in particular. These are different, the red, green, and blue refer to different trust funds that are managed by the Social Security Administration. HI's hospital insurance, that's not looking like it's doing too well. The disability insurance, which surprises me given the massive uptick that we saw at the time of the global financial crisis, when suddenly millions of people became disabled, be that as it may, that's actually projected to be sustainable indefinitely. So that line continues on and doesn't hit zero there. But the one we're concerned with is the blue. So the blue bottoms out in 2034. And the reason why, not to bore you with more statistics here, can be seen in this screenshot from the Social Security Trustees report, where we see the income to the fund has decreased by about $30 billion over this time. I put that down to give it, and just in context, we're talking about record low unemployment in 2022. 2022, things began, especially for tech and real estate, began to soften up towards the end of the year, but we're still talking about record low unemployment. And in that time, Social Security was still decreasing. And that's perhaps a phenomenon of the baby boomers really beginning to shift into retirement. So income taxes, interest, trust fund reserves, you can see, have gone down by about $60 billion over this one-year reporting period. So that's why they're saying we're going to see this trust fund depleted, because just project that trend out, the dependency ratio worsens, and we end up with 77% of benefits being paid by 2034. Moving on, how do I begin? Well, actually, you know what, I won't move on. Any questions? I'm sure there are concerns and maybe some doubtful points, but let me just give it a moment there. Talking about the status of the Social Security Trust Fund and what to project in terms of your benefits. I see a questions come in, but I did want to say, when we run this tool, I'll link to a tool that the Social Security Administration makes available. When you run that tool, if you happen to be younger, say, than the age of 60 as I am, when you see that number, it does not take into consideration that only 77% of benefit will be paid. So what I do in my own projections is I use that 3/4 amount just to be a tiny bit conservative. Okay, Gerald, hi Gerald, has just been updated. It will tell you how much you will be paid given when you choose to retire. Amongst other things, you can also download Social Security statements. Yes, coming up. Dean, no questions about the status. Oh, okay, great. And Joyce writes, given that, oh yes, yeah, I could bottom out by 2034, could it be advantageous to start Social Security before age 7? That is actually a really, really great question. And because I think there's two ways of approaching that question. One would be with the assumption that if you begin taking your benefit before 2034, that it would be locked in at the full amount. I don't think that that's what's going to happen, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't think that that would be the case. I think that everyone's benefit would be reduced going forward, but one of the proposals you'll read about in my newsletter is in fact that, and I forget the senator's name, but there was a proposal, a ridiculous proposal that'll never fly, but that was there's no benefits paid to folks 5 years into the future. So that would be those that have paid into this earned entitlement don't get anything. I don't see that happening. But what Joyce is suggesting here in this question is possible, and that is that folks that get in at a certain time do have a locked-in benefit. Folks that get in later could have a lower benefit, and that could be one of the proposals, one of the compromises that comes from this. So thank you very much for that. And Christine writes, I only have 32 quarters for working for 5 years in the US before leaving for Australia. Am I entitled to Social Security, any Social Security benefit? Great question, Christine. that's coming up. We're going to be talking about the totalization treaty in actually next month's presentation. So let's move on. How do I begin vesting in Social Security in the first place? And it looks like this. So US residents, a US individual needs 40 quarters of coverage, 10 years, in other words, to fully qualify for Social Security retirement benefits. Thankfully, however, you don't need to have much income in any quarter to qualify. Now, if you came in with 1510, it's been increased in 2023, of course, a little bit. If you came in with that minimum amount, your benefit is going to be reduced, but it's not linear. That's the thing. If you're a high wage earner throughout your career, you're going to max out fairly quickly. And that maximum benefit today, if you waited until age 70, is about $50,000 US. The lower end of the, I don't know if there is a lower end of the benefit or if it really matters, because it could be measurable in tens of dollars per month. But you would get something, and it's not linear, so there is some sort of progressive benefit applied to advantage lower income folks. So if you are at the lower end of the spectrum, you're going to get a proportionately greater benefit than someone who's maxing out at the higher end of the income spectrum. It's not possible to earn more than 4 quarters of coverage in any given year, obviously, because there's only 4 quarters in a year. Therefore, you need to make $6,000 each year for 10 years to qualify. It has happened in the past when I've had clients who may not have vested, who may be living, this is specifically in the US, who may not have vested, and I may encourage them to work for another year or something like that in order to get that benefit, given that it's essentially quote unquote free money and earned entitlement they will earn or they will receive as long as they live. Another Q&A. Yes, Alan, that is correct. The upper end is, it's $4,200 a month. That's correct. It's a pretty nice benefit, that one. And to foreshadow Christine's question a moment ago, by the function of a totalization treaty, it is possible to earn as few as 6 quarters of coverage, work for 18 months, make, what did we see, $1,500 a quarter, and you could still earn some sort of benefit. So that is interesting to see. Chats come in. A couple chats have come in. Yay, Christine. Yeah, they exactly. But let's not count your chickens before they hatch. I would encourage you to do as Gerald mentioned earlier, log onto those Social Security sites. It is a hassle. I'm going to tell you, again, it's coming up a little bit later. It is a hassle, and it will take you an hour or two to create a MyGov, what is it, login.id account. They have this online notary thing where they will verify that you are who you are. And then you have to go through this rigmarole, be verified, but then you can log in and see the tax record that the Social Security Administration actually has. Book an appointment with the folks in the Philippines if you're in Australia, or the Social Security Administration if you're in the US, and talk to them about your situation. Better to become to come to that conversation if you have an unusual situation, forearmed and knowing about the totalization treaty, and educate them if that's necessary on how that works. Ron Larson writes, you should do that anyhow to make sure no one claims your benefits without you knowing. Absolutely. Yeah, fraud of all kinds is on the rise, and we certainly would not want that. So really something that I would call this online security hygiene, and that's something that's just baked into the advice that we provide our clients about how they interact on the internet in the first place, how you share your Social Security number or any other personal information, but always a good reminder. So thank you for that, Ron. Social Security taxes on your earned income. So during your working years, that OASDI quiz, what does OASDI stand for again? Old age survivor and disability income, tax of 6.2%. If you're an employee, congratulations, that 6.2% comes out of your paycheck. And your employer pays the other side of that. If you're self-employed, congratulations, you get to pay both sides of that with a minor deduction. So here's one of these stealth tax increases that happens every year, and that is the Social Security wage base. That's to say, if you make up to $160,200 in 2022, you paid that OASDI tax. Above that amount, you stop paying that tax. It's an interesting kind of tax. You don't see that too often. You make that amount and you're done. You've paid that amount and it goes away. We've got some cute little screenshots here that don't really, the first one on the left doesn't really pertain to anything. It's just intended to be someone's pay stub. And the one here on the right, the cap on the maximum earnings, you could see this is what I mean by a stealth tax increase, because look how rapidly it's risen, 137 to 160 in the space of 2 years, which is really quite extraordinary. And I would think that that even outpaces general inflation at that time. So it's kind of a backdoor way that the Social Security Administration has to try and true up that that deficit that they have coming. Insurance, thank you, Ron. I'd appreciate that. I've got the problem of talking and thinking at the same time with one of these primitive male brains that I have. But you're right. Thank you. Insurance. What qualifies as full retirement age? So your full retirement age, I mentioned that alphabet soup earlier, is really dictated by this chart here. I completely expect this to change. I happen to be born in the 80s, and so as a result of that, I'm thinking mine's probably going to be more like 70, and that's a problem for the Social Security Administration for another decade. And so I think we'll see that that change given the increase in life expectancies, which kind of only makes sense, right? And that was it Otto von Bismarck who introduced the concept of the welfare state into Germany at a time, I believe it was age 65, and life expectancy was lower than that. So that's how you have a really viable system when pensions kick in above the average life expectancy. And in the US, that life expectancy is about age 87. So I can understand why these problems have emerged, given that gulf that's arisen between when you can take your benefit and how long people are expected to live. All right, another chat is Amy. Apologies, I have to take. Oh well, thank you, Amy. That's very polite of you to let me know that. Full retirement age. If you take your benefit prior to your full retirement age, this is what I was coming to earlier, then you are going to take a haircut on your benefit for the rest of your life, unless you pay it back. Again, topic for another day, but that can be done. I did once see this happen when a client took it at age 62 just because the folks in the lunchroom said that was what you should do for some silly and ill-informed reason, and she ended up doing that and is now in a situation where she's receiving $1,000 less per month for the rest of her life, because there was a time period that she had to pay it back, but we only started working together shortly after that period of time. So it pays to know what you're doing when dealing with Social Security. Okay, so as I began to say, if you take it before your full retirement age, which is for most people going to be age 67, if you take it at 62, you're taking a 25% haircut for the rest of your life. Now, some folks will need to do that because of their situation, and that, of course, is their prerogative, and they need to do that. If you can afford to defer, my goodness, then do that. Still doesn't necessarily make sense for everyone, however, and that's because the crossover age, as you're about to see, I'll show you a report that we put together. The crossover age is about age 78. So in other words, if you looked at your family health history and you said, you know what, we don't live beyond age 78 in my family, I'm going to take it sooner because I will get more from this system because I don't expect to be around beyond that. Hey, makes sense. I get it. Most folks, however, as I mentioned before, given average life expectancies are higher than that, would do better to defer taking that. All right. So, and excuse me, I think I said age 87 earlier. I think that I conflated my numbers. I think it's actually age 78 is the average life expectancy in the US, although those numbers do differ because there's the general population and then there's the population for that the actuaries look at for annuities, and by virtue of the wealth disparities that exist, the population that have annuities in the first place tend to be in better health and have several years longer life expectancy than the average population. A point worth making, but perhaps a detail more necessary than what we need to get into here. Okay. Maximum reduction is 30% for an individual who has a full retirement age of age 67 and 20% for an individual who has a full retirement age of 65, as you can see here. Okay, so again, you're going to receive your full benefit, your quote unquote full benefit if you wait till your full retirement age, but a raise if you defer until 70 and a haircut if you take it before then. There's also some tax reasons why it's not a great idea to take it before your full retirement age anyway, if you're still earning an income, and that's because your benefit gets reduced. So it's like a shadow tax. How is your benefit calculated? So it's accrued over 10 years of work. We know about that. This is something to take note of, and that is the Social Security Administration will take the individual's 35 highest inflation-adjusted years into consideration when calculating your benefit. Now, here's an important thing to note. The Windfall Elimination Provision, which can affect many Australians with a superannuation balance, doesn't apply if you do in fact have 35 years of having paid into Social Security. Otherwise, the Windfall Elimination Provision, which we'll be talking about in next month's presentation, may result, your superannuation may result in the Windfall Elimination Provision applying to you, and thus a benefit reduction. But that doesn't apply if you have 35 years of income history into Social Security. So various adjustments are made, including when the, okay, we've already been over that, what other or whether other family members are receiving benefits, and if the individual is receiving any pensions through employment. Typically in the US, that's going to be federal benefits, federal pensions where they never paid into Social Security taxes in the first place, and the government pension offset rules, which is more arcane, and we're not going to get into that next time because I just very, very, very rarely see that. More on how your benefit is calculated. Okay, although the Social Security Administration calculates the benefit, it's helpful to know if you want to look into that. So there's the publication. Perhaps if you want to take a screenshot and go to that resource, you can actually see that. I don't really bother. What's the point when you can actually just run the analysis yourself and see exactly what it is, rather than understanding the formula. You can be sure that the formula that they're using in their calculators that the Social Security Administration is using is correct. So, like I said, don't see a whole lot of point in that. But you can come over here and estimate your retirement benefits. What are most folks going to see? I would say, just to level set expectations, between $2,500 and $3,500 a month is these are reasonable amounts to be using. As you heard me say before, the max you could get is at the highest end, but with having waited until age 70, which is how you get up to that $4,200 a month amount. But as I mentioned, please go ahead, log into this website here. It's a simple web search anyway. It's not like this is hidden at the bottom of page 10 in Google's results. If you just type my Social Security retirement benefit estimator, it is going to pop straight up. Okay, now as of last year, I think it was, Ron might correct me there on that one, but I think it was last year that this id.me and login.gov, or login.gov came about to really improve the security for Social Security. This is the process I was talking about before. You go through, work with a notary, an online notary, and they'll confirm you. It took me about 45 minutes when I did this last year, and it now works great. I can log in and check what that benefit actually is. And Alan, good for him, he's checking his right now. I don't have my Social Security login. How can I estimate my benefit? Well, not quite as accurate, but let's click on this here, and we'll see this page load. And plan for retirement. We're not going to bother. I'm not going to sign in here. Determine. Okay, continuing to work. When to apply. Learn how to apply. It's, when you know it, they have changed it. I think Gerald was the one that mentioned that things have changed. But like I said, this is a simple Google search to say Social Security retirement benefit. Social Security retirement benefit estimator. Look at that. Quick calculator, Social Security.gov. This is the same site it's always been. Let's say this is your situation. Enter earnings in the current year. Okay. Future retirement date. If you've decided, no, we don't know the answer to that. You make 60 grand today. Monthly benefit at 67. See, there's the full retirement age, is going to be almost $1,800, and you get that 32% kicker if you wait until age 70 right there. So I'm just showing you those numbers to give folks some idea. Andrew wasn't able to do it from overseas and needed to get the ID.me when I traveled back to the US. Yeah, I've heard of that, actually. Sorry that was your experience. Maybe a way around that is with a VoIP number, so that you can receive codes, or a VPN is another idea. Yep, that might do the trick. I don't know if that was Andrew's problem though. If it was, because I do have a VPN, but I was able to do it. But I have a VoIP phone number as well, so it definitely can be done from overseas. But maybe one of those two, VPN didn't work. Okay, so maybe it's a VoIP, like Google Voice or something like that, to be able to get some codes or something like that. Anyway, there's the Social Security benefit tool. Let's keep moving here. If you have earned income, this is what I was getting to in a minute. Not so smart necessarily to take your benefits sooner. Why? Because earned income before your full retirement age is subject to an earnings test that may reduce your Social Security benefit. If that happens, if your benefit is reduced, then the earnings test no longer applies when you hit your full retirement age, and so it's recalculated as a result of that. Earned income is, of course, I love the literal meaning here. It's not investment income, because that's portfolio income. It's earned income from your labor that would show up on a W-2 statement, which should be arriving, we should have them in hand right around now as we prepare for tax season for 2022. Other earnings don't affect it because, of course, it's not earned income. Some chats have rolled in. Let's have a look. It may require a local US number for okay, that's possible. John, I was able to get a login.id from Australia back in June of 2022. Okay, yeah, and that was my experience too. So thank you, John. I appreciate the comment. Let's see. In 2022, a client who begins collecting Social Security benefits after age 62 and before their full retirement age may have earned income up to about $20,000, which isn't much, without experiencing any reduction in benefits. So if you're going to do some work, then, sorry, I pressed a button there, then your benefits are going to be reduced by 50% for amounts earned over that. So not pretty at all, but again, that is many people's situation. So full retirement age, we know about that. Maximum monthly benefit, you heard me mention that before. I said $4,200 a month, which gets you a little over $50,000 annually. Retirement earnings exempt amount, there it is, $19,560 under the full retirement age, and it won't be reduced. $51,960 during the year you reach your full retirement age, but no limit after that. So massively increases in the year of your full retirement age. Sorry, let's skip past it again. So will my Social Security benefits be reduced? Let's stay on this page for a moment. This also, I'm going to make available on my website. So I do have a couple of these diagrams available for folks if you want to look at this in detail, because I know it can be, if someone's talking, it's hard to go through and view every permutation. But come here to flowcharts, and this is where we have some of these available. I'll make sure we get that particular one up there. But back to the action. What was I talking about here? I'm gonna go back to full screen, and someone's chatted in something. John Dennis writes, is this only US-based income? What if no longer an American citizen? Well, it mostly is US-based income. There is the totalization amount, but how that would affect Americans that have moved to Australia, I can't say for sure. But mostly, let's presume it is US-based income. So that may give Christine cause for concern as well. I have not encountered in practice how that actually has worked out for Americans that moved abroad before accumulating the 40 quarters of coverage to Australia specifically. So that's one of those things where I know what should happen in theory, but Social Security is one of those things where theory and application can sometimes vary a little bit. So will your benefits be reduced or taxed? First, we start off with when's your full retirement age. Let's assume it's age 67. Can you collect benefits on your own work history? And that's going to be slightly confusing because we haven't spoken much about spousal benefits quite yet. So let's hold off on spousal benefits and just say, yes, okay, I have a worker history. I'm therefore eligible for Social Security. Do you have a pension from work not covered by Social Security, such as federal civil service? No, I never worked for the federal government, so we don't care about that. What will be your age when you begin to collect? Well, let's say it's earlier, between age 62, sorry, your benefit's going to be reduced. Bad news. Alternatively, between your full retirement age and age 70, actually, it's the opposite. We need to color code this in green to show an extra bonus, and that is it's not merely reduced, it's enhanced. And as you can see there, if you wait until age 70. If alternatively you simply take it at your full retirement age, then you'll get 100% of the benefit estimate. And then some other things over here that's we're not going to talk about because so many conditions. It's like not alphabet, it's like spaghetti logic with all these different conditions over here. All right, so what about spousal benefits? Here's the deal with spousal benefits. Essentially, if you have a spouse who is entitled to a benefit, then you may get 50% of their benefit until they pass away, and then you get the worker benefit. That's essentially it. So here's the two situations that I see. You see a spouse that that may have done some babysitting or substitute teaching work, has a very low Social Security earnings record. Therefore, if they have a worker record, but 100% of their worker benefit is still less than 50% of their spousal benefit, they would be wise, of course, to take their spousal benefit because it's more. And then when the worker spouse, when the worker spouse passes away, then they're entitled to 100%, as I just mentioned. Okay. Lots of an important caveat here with the final bullet point: spousal benefits do not accrue additional delayed retirement credits if his or her spouse waits beyond their full retirement age for the non-working or lower earning spouse, and that's covered here in this chart that you see here. So this is a little more detailed than I wanted to get into, but I'll just quickly go over this. The wage earner must file and collect his or her own benefit first, for the non-wage earner to apply for the spousal benefit. The earliest this can be done is after the non-wage earner reaches age 62 and conditional logic, and the wage earner has begun collecting his or her own benefit. Because this is the benefit that the non-wage earner will receive for the remainder of his or her life, unless, of course, predeceased by the wage earner, it's necessary to decide whether to take the reduced spousal benefit at age 62 or the full spousal benefit at his or her full retirement age. Again, I probably sound like a broken record, but if you can afford to defer, then you're well advised to do that. Linda, even if divorced, you get their benefit. What if they're younger than me? Yes, what an interesting exception. That even if divorced, yes. If you're remarried, though, that changes things. So be mindful of that. What if they're younger than you? That's where I run into the limits of my knowledge, Linda. I must confess, if there was a significant age disparity, I think it's still a function of their age and how it appears between 62 and the full retirement age. However, I don't think divorcees can take it from 60. I think that's only widows and widowers. David writes in, so if a wage earner takes it at age 62 and reduced, but spots takes their benefit at 67, will they get it based on the non-reduced 67? So if a wage earner takes it 62, well, I can't even follow that, to be honest, Dave. Ron's got me though. Thank you, Ron. So if I have to wait until he's 67 before I can claim his benefits, no, I don't think it's 67. But Linda, your situation with the divorce thing, I'm just going to say I don't know the answer to that one. Don't know the answer to that. Okay, I think Ron's got your answer anyway, David. But so if the wage earner takes it at 62, and which is reduced by definition because they're taking it at 62, but the spouse takes their benefit at 67, will they get it based on the non-reduced 67 benefit? No, I think they get the full retirement age amount. I think that's one we've got to. Thank you, Ron. Ron's is my man here in my corner. Thank you. Okay, and Social Security is one of those things where there is it's like Pareto efficiency. You can spend 20% of the effort to know 80% of it, but there are people whose whole expertise is just on Social Security, and they can answer the most arcane questions that come up. Then adjusted down if early for the spouse. Okay, good. Am I eligible for Social Security benefits as a spouse? So again, good opportunity to take a screenshot or download it from that part of the website that I showed you earlier, because there's a lot of detail here. What about same-sex married couples? Well, thankfully, as a result of DOMA, the Supreme Court struck down the Windsor decision in 2013. As a result, same-sex couples are entitled to the spousal benefits. So just a fun fact there. How do I actually apply to take my Social Security benefit? Well, welcome to www.ssa.gov. And I'm waiting several decades from now, but I'm going to click on that button one day and apply online for retirement benefits. So that's how you do it. Fill it out. Have to go through that login.gov, that my.id process that we spoke about earlier. You cannot apply more than 4 months prior to your 62nd birthday. But if there's one takeaway that you've had from my dry humor here today, is that you wouldn't want to do that anyway if you could afford to do it. Click on the button. Yep. Okay, retirement chat. Webinar chat back here. Miller, if I'm pronouncing that right, writes in, I have 15 years of work experience in the US. I am an American citizen, work in Australia now, and report my income in the US. Will my Australian income count towards calculation of my earned income for Social Security purposes? You know, I don't know the answer to that, because this is one of those things to do with the totalization treaty. If you were making a lot of money in Australia, that would be to your advantage, of course. but I would be inclined to think that, I'm going to take a guess here, maybe Ron knows the answer, but I'm inclined to think it's not going to affect your Social Security earnings record from here on. That would be my guess, but note, I'm saying guess, guess, guess. This is one of those things where it does, oh, even Ron doesn't know. Okay, but I think you're correct. So so I don't think it's going to be to your benefit. So what we know for sure is that you would get some benefit, but probably not if you were at the top end of that Social Security scale. I doubt that it would be to your benefit, given that you're in Australia paying Australian taxes. Your foreign tax credits are offsetting your US taxes, so you're almost certainly not having to pay any US income taxes anyway, so that would avoid it. If, however, here's a scenario, which is, Miller, is not the question that you've asked, but if you were working, say, in the UAE or a country, or the Virgin Islands, Bermuda or British Virgin Islands, places like this, where there's no income tax, then you would still be on the hook for US taxes, in which case my answer would swap. And that is, I would say you probably would count for increasing your Social Security benefit. Tracy writes, depends if paying taxes and into Social Security in the US, I think. Okay, no one seems to know this. I guess it is because I don't pay towards Social Security. Yes, that's true, but the totalization agreement exists for globally mobile folks. So if you worked for 5 years in one country, then moved to another, and then another, you're paying into all these different Social Security systems, but you may never get a benefit. So the idea is that with the totalization agreements, that your benefits are quote unquote totalized. And as I mentioned earlier, with as few as 6 quarters of coverage, you can get some benefit. But I just run into the limit of my knowledge where you have folks that have just different situations, and what would happen to their benefit and so forth. So you will get a benefit, but I don't know, and I don't think it's going to be enhanced by your time in Australia. Eleonora Montgomery writes, I'm wondering if this is the daughter of a former client of mine. Do I need to calculate whether it is better to take my own or my 50% of my? Yes, you do. Yep, that is correct. And I'll show you that in just a second, as a matter of fact. So how do I actually apply? You come here, more screenshots of what things look like. When is the right time? Q&A. Someone wrote into the Q&A. Stephen writes, I'm 60-year-old Aussie expat living in the US, have worked 18 months in the US. Should I work a few more years in the US to claim Social Security benefits? You should work a lot more years to claim Social Security benefits. In fact, that's not your primary worry. Your primary worry is, what are you going to do for healthcare? Because you're not going to be eligible with 18 months of history for Medicare, in which case you're going to find that you might not be retiring in the US at all if you've got no healthcare and you have to be on a private healthcare situation in your senior years. So if you're in the US with that, I don't think you're going to be eligible for a Social Security benefit at all. Okay, Ron's got a good resource. Well, I'm presuming it's a good resource, but Ron's got what is probably a good resource. Thank you. Right there. I want to show you something else, but we're going to get to that on the next slide, actually. So some factors to think about when it comes time to claim Social Security, such as a higher earning spouse may choose to delay to maximize their retirement benefit. There's the family health history, of course. That was the point I made earlier about this crossover period between age 78 and 80, where you'd be better off waiting. But if you're not going to live that long anyway, then take it sooner. Your financial need, your earnings potential from age 62 to your full retirement age, and then to age 70. And then other retirement savings. Again, these are going to affect the ability to defer. Simon's written in and says, if I've worked in the US for 21 years and moved back to Australia at 55, work more in Australia than any time after I'm 62, while still living and likely working in Australia, I'm eligible to start receiving the Social Security benefits, right? Yes, correct. And it's frozen at the 21 years I did work and pay into the system. We think so. I understand smart decision is to wait as long as possible to take it. Correct. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. Actually, we're not going to look at that one so much because I've got a different report that I ran, which I think is much better. And that's from a tool that we use courtesy of BlackRock. So Social Security benefits estimate. I just threw in some generic information here. It's not based on any actual client situation, but approximates what might be some people's situation on today's webinar. So what do we see here? Wife's earnings history. Okay, so she did not work outside the home. That's essentially what we're saying here. And the husband's earning history, this is going to be his monthly benefit estimate and how it changes. And there's the spousal benefit right there. Adjusted spousal benefits for wife. There it is. It's changing, but note that delayed retirement credits do not accrue to the wife beyond the full retirement age. So no benefit to her in this case. Whereas he is going to see an increase, but that will be hers once he dies, assuming he predeceases her. Longevity assumptions. This is so estimated lifetime benefits. This is putting it into lump sum amounts. Not that you ever get paid a lump sum amount, but if we were to add up the total amount expected to be received, then if you took the spousal benefit, the total lifetime spousal benefits net present value at age 62 would be 357. Husband benefits would be 741 because his is double, of course. We know that. Total benefits would be $1 million. Full retirement age, 1.3 million at both collected age 70. Now that's interesting. Why would that only be a little bit more? Or the hybrid approach, which is the optimal amount is also 1.3 million. This is what I was referring to earlier about the crossover point. So you see at about age 70 to 80, whether you took it at age 62, 67, or age 70, it starts to cross over. It looks like in this specific example, it's actually more like 81. But if you live beyond 81, that's when taking it, deferring the amount that you're receiving begins to make more sense, financially at least.
I found this on the web.
Oh, excuse me, Siri's eavesdropping on me. Okay, well, we're about at time for today's presentation, so I'm going to stop it there, and that's pretty much perfectly timed for us to resume next month with Social Security for returned Aussies or Americans abroad. Yes, I am intentionally doing a cliffhanger to bring you back next month so that we can talk about the juicy topics that remain to be spoken about. Andrew writes in, any Social Security benefit from having a non-US spouse who has never lived or worked in the US or have a US tax ID. Tune in next month, Andrew, because we do get into that, but I won't be so cute as to not answer your question. And the answer is yes, they do. My favorite example of this is a client who, she actually did become a US citizen, but what's interesting to note is that with Social Security and the totalization agreement that Australia has with the US on this point, you do come up with these interesting situations like this former client of mine, where she had never lived in the US, married a US defense contractor, and subsequently received a spousal benefit, and he passed on. God rest in rest in peace. But she now receives the worker benefit too, and she has never lived in the US other than visiting friends and family on occasion. So that is an interesting situation. So spouses do also get it. And another shocking thing to know about Social Security is it has nothing to do with your legal residency status, i.e., if you are a citizen who renounces your citizenship, if you are a green card holder who surrenders your green card, if you're a temporary visa holder who returns to Australia, it makes no difference to your Social Security status in Australia, at least, because the totalization agreement again. So people are shocked to learn that. They're like, I don't believe it, but I can guarantee you that one is true. It's an earned entitlement. It has nothing to do with your legal status. Thank you, Ron. I always feel better when I see Ron second what I'm saying there. So that's good news indeed. Thank you everyone for attending here today. Appreciate it. Don't keep these monthly webinars a secret. I do the best I can to get the word out there. If you would, the only favor I ask is on Facebook groups. Sometimes I get administrators are like, hey, he's trying to sell something. I don't think you've found that I'm trying to overly sell my services. This is selling by way of demonstrating expertise. That's really what's going on here. And I think you've found there to be a lot of information here, and there has not been much of a sell at all. So thank you so much. Let's rush forward. I wanted to show you a couple more things. Here's next month's webinar. We're going to get into the totalization agreement, amongst other things. What is the Windfall Elimination Provision? Which country has taxing rights? And my favorite question of all, can I be what they call a pensioner and get the Australian age pension and Social Security benefits? The answer is you could in theory, but you wouldn't want to anyway. If you wanted to reach out, please go to my website, click on that button right there, get started. And there's also the Knowledge Center that we have right there. Otherwise, thank you so much, and I appreciate your attendance here today. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon or evening. All righty. See you later.